Which deceased person, if brought back to life, would be the most surprised to learn they became famous posthumously? Otzi the Iceman. It's the earliest surviving naturally mummified human remains. At about 5,000 years old. It would take a while to explain the concept of fame to him first. I remember reading about this in a standardized reading test in 4th grade. It was so interesting that I read it a bunch of times and almost ran out of time to finish the section LMAO. Edit. Since lots of people are asking. I am also 19. How old are you? I think I remember reading that too. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Yeah, same. I'm 19. I mean, you take any composer, writer or painter from centuries ago and they will be surprised. During their life they could have been next to royalty. But to imagine that you are celebrated even after hundreds of years, it's not something easy to wrap your head around. I imagine. So it would be cool to say anyone very respected. Like Beethoven, Cervantes or Goya. To know that everyone considers you the best of the best. Even after the rotting time. Might blow your mind. I feel like of all people, Beethoven would be the least surprised. However, anyone before him would be severely surprised because it was a tradition to lose all fame once you died, since nobody would play your music. Beethoven's death started the movement of people playing and conducting dead people's music. And he was worshipped like the next Jesus sometimes. Well, I would imagine for the reason of surpassing centuries. You know? But maybe Vivaldi would be better. Didn't he died poor and sad? There are a lot actually that would be a good example. Yeah. Especially people like J.S. Bach. Who literally was forgotten for 100-ish of years and is now worshipped as perhaps the best composer to have ever lived. His children were known to be more famous than him. Straight up Diogenes. The mad lad literally lived his life trying to not be important. And ended up being one of the most popular people in history. Joseph Merrick, otherwise known as the Elephant Man. I think he would be surprised about how many plays, books and even had a movie made about him. Edit. Wow, thank you guys for silver, and yes, I know that Joseph Merrick was famous in time, but I think that he'd be surprised that he's even more famous, but also that today's time he would be more accepted. I think people of this generation would be more supportive of him in general. Poor guy was treated harshly throughout his lifetime. His is a unique story of how a man with such childhood abuse, tremendous hardship, and immense physical constraint could still come out of all of it a gentle soul. Truly a one-of-a-kind personality when the cycle of abuse so commonly breeds future abusers and bitter human beings. Anastasia. The most famous Romanov, and she was a young teenaged girl who actually did nothing of note in her life while her sisters, parents and brother were more famous in their time. Rasputin would be proud and confused. Especially if he heard the song and fanfictions written about him. Fanfictions? You know what? I won't even ask. Yeah, there's a couple of fanfictions I found which were like Rasputin x Reader, Rasputin x Anastasia, don't ask, and Rasputin x Tsarina Alexandra. Then there's ones where Rasputin rises from the dead. They're hard to find though. Alrighty then. Time to go down a cursed rabbit hole of Rasputin fanfics. See you all in HL or therapy. Franz Kafka. He had no faith in his work. And his will stated the executor of it to destroy them all. Other guy went against these wishes and published. Wow, you really earned that username. That was so hard. I was going to say something until I saw it. Got me. That's so Kafkaesque. Rosalind Franklin. Not even Watson and Crick truly recognized the importance of her work in her lifetime. Now the first thing you're taught in any genetics class is that it was her picture that helped them figure it out. Edit. I think she'd be surprised to learn she's famous now because she was completely overshadowed and unrecognized in her life. Not because I believe she didn't know what she was doing was important. Kashim. Link. He was likely just some middle-rank accountant or something like that. And now his name is remembered when those of kings and priests and warlords and whatnot from his time are all forgotten. Just like Erastus, the director of public works from Romans chapter 16:23. He was mentioned in a list of people sending their greetings, but became famous when someone found his name carved in a public work. Robert Johnson and his impact on music. Nostradamus. He wouldn't have seen it coming. That's for sure. To go the opposite way. I've always thought the ancient Roman emperors like Julius Caesar would be embarrassed at how small their once great empire now is. At its height under Trajan's rule, the empire spanned a greater distance than the modern United States. And now the empire is completely dissolved and their descendants are relegated back to the peninsula. If I were a Roman emperor, I would be proud to know that the Roman state, monarchy, republic, empire, Byzantium, lasted for more than 2,000 years. I would be fine with Italy just being a regular nation, knowing that Latin languages are spoken everywhere and that Roman culture is dominant over the entire Western Hemisphere. Ignaz Semmelweis faced ruin because of his insistence on aseptic technique. Hand washing. He would probably wake up and have a heart attack if he found out how important his methods are today. Vincent van Gogh. The dude was severely depressed his whole life and only sold one painting while alive. He eventually killed himself only for his art to be worth millions now. I lived in Amsterdam for a few years and always wondered what Van Gogh would make of the mobs of tourists at the museum dedicated solely to his work. Especially because more visit that museum than the Rijksmuseum next door with countless Rembrandts and Vermeers and other Dutch master works. There is an episode of Doctor Who where they meet Van Gogh. I won't spoil anything about the episode, but it's stunningly beautiful. Edit to include my favorites. This, Vincent and the Doctor, is one of the greatest episodes in television history. In my opinion. Edit. Critically speaking. But I have other factors at play. Stuff I was going through personally. The people I was with at the time. Things that might not necessarily be objectively better. And which I have referred to as my personal favorites. Separate from best of lists. Blink is also amazing. Terrifying the first time. But Silence in the Library and the partner episode Forest of the Dead takes it for me. I cry every DN time. Shout out to The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances. Oh. And I was reminded below of The Girl in the Fireplace. Such a beautiful episode. The sets were so good. If you want to be deeply unsettled, give Midnight a watch. Pitch perfect performances. I've also been reminded of Asylum of the Daleks and The Doctor's Wife. For lighter things, the Adipose episode is right up there. Also the first episode of S2. And The 11th Hour. Hands down. Tied with Blink for favorite episode. Stieg Larsson, who wrote The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series. He was a dedicated, talented writer who, in life, never found great success. His became a best-selling author many times after his death. Lizzie Borden's parents, either of them. I'm torn between Poe and Lovecraft. Both were spectacularly unsuccessful in life. If you go by wealth and fame, it's challenging for a modern reader to grasp how utterly obscure Lovecraft was when he died. Despite Derleth's many faults, he must be given credit for having started the old gentleman's posthumous career by founding Arkham House. And it's difficult to read about Poe's last days without pangs of sympathy. There's mordant amusement in contemplating how Rufus Griswold is now remembered only for trying to bury Poe's reputation with his corpse. Poe was pretty well known at the time of his death. The Raven was immensely popular and he was making good money on the lecture circuit and doing live readings at the time of his death. He would probably be more surprised by the dark, maniacal imager himself cultivated by Griswold. Nietzsche. I heard he was selling less than 100 copies of some of his books. And now he's known as one of the greatest philosophers ever. The man was ahead of his time. Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick. He was considered an unsuccessful writer while he was alive. He only managed to sell about 3,000 copies of Moby Dick in his time. Now it's one of the most well-known classics. Emily Dickinson, Edgar Allan Poe, Sylvia Plath, Franz Kafka. There'd be a lot of shocked writers on this list. Kafka is the most brutal for me. Tormented from birth by his domineering father and working a depressing job he felt was pointless. Wondering what the reason for his existence was. He found an outlet through writing and made one good friend that encouraged him to keep going. He died at 42 from tuberculosis, with his one wish being that all of his works were burnt. So glad he didn't listen and publish them anyways. But he died thinking he had an inconsequential existence. And you really feel it with the themes of pointless bureaucracy in the trial and pure plight and insignifiance and helplessness in the metamorphosis. How Kafkaesque. That Roman in Pompeii who died while masturbating. That's the way I want to go out. You wanna come as you go? Does the Pope st in the woods? Matthew Shepard. He was just a college kid that was tortured and beaten to death for being gay. I don't think he knew he'd be remembered for anything. Gregor Mendel. His published works related to heredity were almost completely ignored until they were rediscovered about 3 decades later. Hitler's parents. No. His art teacher. Oof. My bad guys. 2 seconds of going back in time and being like, listen. Dummies, these paintings are FG amazing. This kid. Huge artist. Let him in. Quote. And then throw some money on the table. I dunno. But millions upon millions of lives saved. Including his own. Ignaz Semmelweis. He pioneered the idea that hand washing saves lives and was the source of the name of the Semmelweis reflex, which is the tendency to reject new evidence or knowledge that contradicts established norms. Because his idea was soundly rejected until after he died. The poet John Keats, who died at 25, convinced he'd been robbed of a chance to make a significant contribution to English literature. His gravestone literally reads, "Here lies one whose name was writ in water." Quote. Elizabeth Short, posthumously known as the Black Dahlia. Even people who do not know much about true crime always still seem to know her name. This question got me thinking about all the people that would be surprised at how much notoriety they got from disappearing or being murdered. I think Shakespeare would be floored if he knew his works were still being taught and read. Seriously. You guys read my plays that are meant to be watched. What? You egg? He stabs him. Exit. Pursued by a bear. Van Gogh. I guess. He is a everyday name these days. He would be proud and shocked to see his influence. Vincent van Gogh. Definitely. He just wanted to sell and make his art his whole life. He died without having that. I'm pretty sure he died dirt poor. His grandson made him famous. It was his dream to be famous for his art. And he'll never know because he died before it happened. It was his brother's wife and son who made him famous. Actually. But yeah, it's incredibly tragic that so many artists who are practically worshipped now died without knowing people appreciated their work. That's FG tragic, honestly. Alan Turing. This is a great answer. His achievements were supposed to be top secret. As were other things. I graduated with a computer science degree in 2009. I didn't learn about Alan Turing until my senior year, and the fact that he was gay only came about due to one of my peers asking why he killed himself. I'm glad his history is more prevalent now. Edit. So many CS majors shocked and confused and even a little snide about me learning this so late in my program. My comment is regarding the historical context of Turing. Our CS courses felt very much like mathematical courses. Thus historical context was rarely given when discussing theory. Niels Henrik Abel. Mathematician completely unknown in his lifetime. Died at age 26 of tuberculosis. Then his mathematical work was discovered, which put him near the top rank of mathematicians ever. When Norway raised a statue of him, they put it on a tall column because nobody knows what he looked like. Similarly, Evariste Galois died age 21. Link Evariste_Galois. Nah. Galois knew his work was gonna revolutionize mathematics. He also knew that he had terrible eyesight and was a poor shot. So dedicated the last night of his life before the duel summarizing the proofs and ideas in his head. Truly an unfathomable sacrifice. 99% of people would probably spend their last hours with their loved ones. Couldn't he have just not dueled? Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos.